Good evening. Welcome to the Community Roundtable virtual meeting regarding the proposed County of San Diego Working Families Ordinance. My name is Nicole Alejandre, Assistant Director of the Department of General Services for the County of San Diego. We want to thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, we will review the proposed Working Families Ordinance and will capture your feedback about potential impacts. The proposed ordinance includes wage and sick leave standards for construction and business operations conducted on leased county-owned property. We are offering Spanish interpretation tonight. At this time, for all attendees, please select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select the language you would like to hear. Interpreters will be providing live interpretation for the meeting. Instructions are also located on the screen. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to the county team joining us tonight and leading the county staff response to the Board of Supervisors. Our Department of General Services team includes Carrie Hoff, Deputy Director of Asset Management. Next is Steve Schmidt, Deputy Director for Capital Construction. Krista Ellis is the Chief of Real Estate. Craig Gibson and Hugh Rawls are project managers in our property management section of Real Estate Services. In addition to the Department of General Services staff, we have Ann Baldwin, who is the DPW Airport's Real Estate Project Manager, David Norgard, Chief of Development for Department of Parks and Recreation, Bill Morgan, Deputy Director for the Department of Public Works. Thank you again for joining us this evening. We appreciate you taking the time to provide input on the proposed Working Families Ordinance. I will now turn things over to Carrie Hoff. Carrie.
Good evening. Thank you, Nicole, and welcome everyone.
A few housekeeping items to share. If you are having technical difficulty at any time tonight, please put a note in the chat. Access via the chat button at the bottom of the screen.
And our IT team will work with you. Our meeting is scheduled for an hour and a half this evening, and we will provide you with information regarding the anticipated timeline of the proposed ordinance, an overview of the ordinance as written, some real-life examples, and an opportunity for input. We are monitoring the meeting chat, so if you have questions or comments, please place them there at any time. We will capture those comments at the end of the evening for our staff report. In this meeting, we are able to answer general questions as they pertain to the proposed ordinance. However, we are unable to advise on how the ordinance, if approved, is applied, or answer questions regarding specific leases or specific construction projects. To begin, what triggered this community forum? On July 13th, 2021, the county's Board of Supervisors considered Agenda Item 21, titled Establishing Fair Employment Standards on County Construction Projects and County-Owned Leased Property. At that meeting, the board directed the county's Chief Administrative Officer to return to the board in 90 days with a draft Working Families Ordinance, pre-qualification policy, proposed amendments to existing policies, and a report on the estimated impact of implementing the Working Families Ordinance on county construction projects and county-owned leased property. That is why we are here tonight, to gather input in response to the board's direction. After the July 13th board meeting, the 90-day clock began, and county staff are preparing to return to the board on October 5th. The timeline on the slide reflects the multiple ways to provide input on the potential impact the proposed ordinance may have on your business as it applies to county property or county construction projects. There have been a number of feedback opportunities in August, continuing into early September, including attending and participating this evening. We are sending emails to contractors who have held county contracts for projects that are $500,000 or more in size, and to all county lessees about this draft ordinance. Construction contractors and county lessees were sent surveys in order to quantify feedback. At any time, you can reach out to the Board of Supervisors to provide comment. And specifically for the October 5th board meeting, public comment on the specific ordinance agenda item is available via the county's Clerk of the Board webpage the week before the Board of Supervisors meeting. Finally, public comment is available to those that attend the October 5th board meeting in person or via phone. Please refer to the county's Clerk of the Board webpage for those details. Myself and others will develop a staff report based on the impact input we are receiving prior to the October 5th board meeting. The week before the board meeting, the agenda and board letter regarding the proposed ordinance agenda item will be available on the Clerk of the Board webpage. Once the proposed ordinance is discussed at the October 5th meeting, the board may decide to proceed with the ordinance. If they do, they will set a date for a future board meeting where the ordinance would be adopted, and then the ordinance would take effect 30 days after that future board meeting. Tonight, we'll be doing polls throughout the meeting to gather your feedback, and we will monitor the chat feature. When you see this poll icon in the upper right corner of the slide on your screen, it means we are getting ready to open up a poll to get your feedback. The link to the poll will appear in the chat feature of this meeting. Let's go ahead and have everyone practice using the poll feature to learn a little bit more about who is here. Mark your selection and let's see the results. Please comment in the chat if you have any questions about how to use the poll function or need assistance. Okay. The link to the poll is in the chat, and you can reply via that link. The question is, which of the following apply to you? And select all that apply. Lease space from the county, sublease county space, labor group, construction contractor, small business, large business, nonprofit, government, local within San Diego County. I do not represent an organization or a business. So it looks like we're starting to have results come in. I'm seeing a good number for sublease county space, also small business and large business. So thank you all for your replies. All right. Oh, the second option is moving ahead with sublease space, and we have more responses coming in. Thank you everyone for submitting those via the link. So our next poll will let us learn a little bit more about who has participated in previous feedback sessions and who's participating for the first time. We are interested in knowing if you've participated in previous virtual roundtables, in surveys, if you have sent comments to the county, or if this is your first time participating. Remember to look in the chat for the link to the poll. This question is, which of the following have you participated in? The Lessee Roundtable, the Lessee Survey, Construction Roundtable, Construction Survey, sent comments to the county via email, sent comments to the county via letter. This meeting is my first time participating. Oh, it looks like we have a good number of folks who are participating for the first time, although I will say that the Lessee Roundtable is starting to edge close. So this is great. It looks like we have a mix of folks who have participated and given feedback in other ways, as well as some folks who are participating for the first time. We're glad you're here. So next, we're going to review the draft ordinance. We will first review the portion of the draft ordinance that relates to county construction projects. Then we will review the portion of the draft ordinance that relates to county-owned leased property. I will now turn it over to Steve Schmidt to summarize employment standards for county construction projects. Steve?
Thank you, Carrie, and good evening. Now we will provide an overview of the proposed ordinance. For those of you that have taken a look at it or have it in front of you, the sections you see on the screen may look familiar. The proposed ordinance has three main components. Section 7310 pertains to county construction projects. This section would require construction completed via county awarded contracts, regardless of property ownership, to utilize a skilled and trained workforce, pay the highest of prevailing, minimum, living, or similar wage, and provide paid sick leave. Section 7311 is specific to those with real estate agreements on county-owned property, which Krista Ellis will speak to momentarily. Section 7312 includes a list of exceptions to the ordinance. Notable exceptions include construction contracts less than $500,000 and job order contracts, also known as JOC. Additional sections include 7313, which outlines how violations of the ordinance would be captured via reporting to the new County Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. And section 7314 notes that if sections of the ordinance are judged to be invalid, then those sections could be severed. Focusing back on section 7310, the ordinance as written will apply to any contractor and its subcontractors performing construction pursuant to a contract that is greater than $500,000. So what will apply? A contractor and its subcontractors will be required to pay employees the higher of any prevailing wage rates set by the California Department of Industrial Relations, minimum wage, living wage, or similar wage rates that may be set by the county by ordinance, and local, state, or federal minimum or similar wage rates if applicable to the work. Utilizing a skilled and trained workforce to complete county construction contracts as set forth in Public Contract Code 2600. Provide employees on county construction contracts with paid sick leave, which will minimally accumulate up to 56 hours per year. Next slide. Okay, we will have 4 poll questions relating to construction projects to guide that discussion. We'll be summarizing the input provided today in the staff report to the board, and we'll be capturing the comments made in the chat section of this meeting. So let's pose for a quick poll. Remember to check in the chat feature for the link to the poll. So this poll is based on the key items proposed in the county's Working Family Ordinance. Would there be an impact to your firm or provide construction bids or proposals for county projects? And we see we're getting a bunch of responses here. So yes, that it would impact is at about 60% right now. No at about 14%, and unknown at this time, 29, 26. Okay. It's wrapping up with nearly 70% saying yes, 12% no, and 20% undecided. To the chat moderator, any comments or trends that may be seeing in the chat regarding impacts?
Yes, Steve, this is Mary. We had a question asking how many people are on the call, and right now we show that we have 70 attendees. So as you look at the percentages, it may be slightly less who are responding, but that gives a sense of who is here. We also had a question that came in asking about, can I get a copy of this? So we will post a video of this meeting so you can review this, and we have been posting copies of the transcript of the chat as well. And then I think I'm looking to see there is a lease-related question.
This is Ann. There was a lease-related question asking if you are on county leased property and you have a construction process less than, or project less than 500,000, would you need to pay contract wages? And so the threshold for contracting projects on leasehold is $25,000. So over $25,000, you would need to pay contract wages, yes. There's also a question regarding labor agreements.
So there was a question regarding collective bargaining contracts. Would this ordinance be waived, or would this add new costs to the contractor? Currently, there is 0 sick leave for unions, is what the comment states. Steve, do you have any insight on that?
I do not.
Okay. Well, we'll make note of that, and we'll be capturing that in our comments this evening.
Okay,
That's all we're seeing.
next slide, please. So next, we would like to know if the proposed ordinance would impact your likelihood of responding to county construction opportunities. Once again, you'll see a link in the chat feature for the poll. And please feel free to use the chat box to provide specific impacts or additional comments on your poll response. So the responses are no impact or influence, more likely to respond to county construction bids or proposals, less likely to respond to county construction bids or proposals, or unknown at this time. So we're getting a bunch of responses here. It's kind of stabilizing with roughly 2/3 saying less likely to respond, 20% saying no impact or influence, and about 15%, and a small percent saying more likely to respond. Any trends in the chat on responses here?
Not in response to this question.
Okay, thank you. All right, next slide, please. Construction cost impacts. Our next poll question is specific to the potential impacts to cost for construction projects under the proposed ordinance. Please, once again, check in the chat for a link to the poll. And as before, if you have details about impacts related to costs that you want to share, please comment in the chat. So the responses are no impact, costs to the county could potentially decrease, costs to the county could potentially increase, or unknown at this time. So things seem to be stabilizing with 85% saying costs for the county could potentially increase. Unknown at this time, 10%, no impact, 5%. Anything in the chat that's a trend we're seeing?
Yeah, Steve, this is Carrie, and we're seeing some comments. This one was related to the prior poll, just saying that we should have an option for will not bid, and some similar comments about the impact being negative to the construction contractors. There was a question, a follow-up question on the $25,000 threshold, Anne. It's asking, is that for the year, and does it include the lease?
It does not include the lease, but if a lessee has a construction project on leasehold, it's a given contract. So if you are doing contract work and that contract exceeds $25,000 for the work, then it would apply.
Thank you, Anne. And there's another question that also looks to relate more to a lessee asking about an organization that is a nonprofit providing affordable childcare to low-income to moderate families. They are not a construction project. Is the ordinance applicable to childcare projects?
The ordinance, and we haven't quite reached the lessee portion of this presentation, but the ordinance does have wage requirements for businesses operating on or from county-owned leased property. So if it was a child care facility on county-owned property, as the ordinance is currently written, it would apply.
Including nonprofits.
Including nonprofits.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Next slide, please. The pre-qualification process. Our last construction-specific poll question is regarding implementing a new pre-qualification process. The board requested staff to return with a pre-qualification policy and proposed amendments to existing policies to require prospective bidders and proposers on public works projects to pre-qualify prior to submitting a bid or proposal. Once again, please look in the chat feature for a link to this poll. And if there are other impacts related to pre-qualification that you anticipate that you could tell us about, please comment in the chat. So in this case, the responses are no impact, more likely to respond to county construction bids or proposals, less likely to respond to county construction bids or proposals, or unknown at this time. Responses seem to be stabilizing at a little bit over 50% saying less likely to respond, 8% saying more likely to respond, 27% at unknown at this time, and 15% saying no impact. So thank you for that. And now I will turn the presentation over to Krista Ellis, who will focus on the leased property section of the proposed ordinance. Krista?
Great. Thank you, Steve. Before I get started, I just wanted to note there's some comments in the chat, and there's a number of them. So we wanted to recognize that we are responding to them as quickly as we are able, and we'll try to do some verbally here as well. We just want you to know we're seeing them and capturing them all tonight. So thank you for those comments. So looking at the slide before you, we want to focus on section 73.11 at this time. This is the area of the proposed ordinance that focuses on county-owned leased property. And I see a number of comments in the chat regarding this topic, so I think this may provide some clarity to some of those comments. This section of the proposed ordinance, as summarized on the slide, is specific to those with real estate agreements on county-owned property. So that means lessees, licensees, and others making use of county-owned property, including sublessees, real property licenses, and others contracting at any level. Similar to section 73.10 that Steve spoke about, the ordinance as written would require employees and contractors working on or from county-owned property being paid the higher of any wage rate, such as prevailing wage, minimum wage, living wage, or similar local, state, or federal wage rates. Additionally, employees working on or from county-owned property would need to accumulate 56 hours of paid sick leave per year. As Steve also mentioned, section 73.12 includes a list of exceptions to the ordinance. Those that may apply to leases may include single craft projects of less than $25,000, which Ann spoke to a little bit earlier tonight. And those may include projects like tenant improvements or housing projects where the county received the underlying proposal or entered into an agreement for the project before the effective date of the ordinance. Now that we've had a quick overview of the proposed ordinance, we will highlight 2 real-world examples to show how the ordinance may apply. First is an example of a nonprofit organization that is leasing space on county-owned parkland. The ordinance as written does apply to nonprofit organizations. We want to point out that as written now, the ordinance would not be retroactive and would be triggered if there is a discretionary amendment or a new real estate contract. However, the final ordinance language and specific terms of your real estate agreement would need to be reviewed if the ordinance is approved. Please note that volunteers would not fall under this ordinance as written. Additionally, the Board of Supervisors can waive all or a portion of the ordinance requirements with regards to a particular project or agreement. We have received many great questions leading up to tonight regarding the proposed ordinance, and we'll just share a few of them. As you'll see on the slide here, the first one is in the text box, and it's regarding the applicability of the ordinance to rental agreements on county properties, such as concerts in a park or fun runs. The answer is that the ordinance, as written now, would apply to those types of agreements. So let's try another poll to better understand the types of businesses who are participating tonight that have real estate agreements on county-owned property. If you have a real estate contract with the county, would you please respond to the poll link in the chat at this time? The poll is asking what type of real estate contract you have with the county, and the options include a lease with DPW Airport, a lease with the Department of General Services, a license, or sublease. Thank you all for responding. We'll wait a few more moments to give folks the time to select one. So it looks like it's pretty evenly split. Right now, it looks like we have slightly more subleases for the folks that have current contracts, quickly followed by just general leases with either airports or Department of General Services, pretty evenly split. And just a few with license. Okay. Thank you so much for your response. So at this time, we would like to understand some of the reasons you have chosen to lease space from the county if you currently hold a lease with us. You will see another poll link in the chat feature. Please respond only if you are currently or have in the past leased space from the county. Please note if you select other in the poll that you can add your comment in the text response in the chat for us to see. So the question in the poll is, which of the following reasons you lease space from the county, including location, price, lease requirements, proximity to public transit, customers already at the location for other services, ability to collaborate with other businesses, county requested use of county space as part of a contract for program services, or other. So it looks like the vast majority of those responding, location was key, quickly followed up by price. Price seems to also be important to why you selected county-owned properties for your businesses. Great. I'll turn it over now, see if we have any more questions or trends in the chat.
We really do. So a question came in asking, stating the county is sitting on a 30-plus acre parcel next to Gillespie Field with an entitled project. This ordinance kills the project. Can the city of El Cajon purchase the land from the county? So thank you for that comment, and I think we'll be able to get back in touch with.
I can speak to it.
Sorry, thank you, Anne.
No,
that'd be great.
absolutely. The land was granted to the County of San Diego under the Surplus Property Act, which had a deed restriction that the land be used for aeronautical purposes. In order to change that and allow for non-aeronautical purposes, the county had to seek an approval, a land use change authorization from the federal government to allow for that. In order to sell airport land, you need to get an instrument of release, which completely releases the county from those deed restrictions. And the FAA is unlikely to do that in this case because that land remains a possible asset that can be used to provide revenues to support the county's 8-airport system. So without a removal of the deed restriction under approval of the FAA, that land could not be sold.
Thank you, Ann. And there was a response. This individual says, okay, let's do it. So thank you for that. We have captured it, and we appreciate that. There's also been some commentary in terms of, does this ordinance as written just cover contractor businesses, or does it also include businesses not related to construction on county land or lease? For example, restaurants, FCOs, maintenance shops are examples.
Yes, and as it's currently written, the proposed ordinance would extend to all types of businesses that are on county-owned leased property, and that includes, as we said, nonprofits, government agencies. I mean, I've seen that. We've got somebody asked about an equestrian facility. Again, it pertains to workers who work on or from the premises, and as currently drafted, it does not specifically exclude those categories of company. So,
yeah. There was a check asking if we were still at 70 participants. We have 82 attendees, and then there are 18 panelists in the meeting currently. There was also a comment or a question asking for construction contractors who have their headquarters on county leased property, would the wage ordinance apply to the everyday workers that operate at the county leased property, our business, and or workers of the same company?
So as it's currently proposed, we suggest that in calculating your impacts, you assume the ordinance is applied as broadly as possible based on the language. If you have your headquarters on county-owned leased property, and that is the base of employment for workers, even if they potentially work off-site, it could apply to them as well.
Thank you. There was also a comment suggesting that special events on county property be exempt from this ordinance as the parameters of the ordinance. Thank you. We will bring that commentary back in our report. A comment that it seems like this will adversely affect the taxpayer. Will this be put before the taxpayers to vote on before it would be passed? And the answer is no. This will go before the Board of Supervisors, and we will go back over the time frame, and the date of the meeting is October 5th. And so your commentary will be brought forward to the board as a part of the return with the impact statement about this draft ordinance. There was a question about what is the minimum wage you are suggesting? What is the prevailing wage? So minimum wage varies depending on jurisdiction. Individual incorporated cities can set a minimum wage. There is a California minimum wage. And then prevailing wage is a standard that applies to the construction trades set by the state of California. So it would depend on the location of the county property in order to determine what the minimum wage is that would apply to that property.
And I will just confirm here on this next slide, we've got one frequently asked question. That's several people have inquired as to whether prevailing wage is the wage that would apply to their workers if they're not in a construction capacity. If there is not a prevailing wage classification for a given employee, then that prevailing wage would not apply, and the next highest wage, minimum living or similar wage by the jurisdiction is what would apply.
We're seeing some comments in the chat regarding how to determine which wage to apply, and that will be held to each business owner to determine that based on the jurisdiction and the type of employees, the type of work that's being done on the county-owned property.
There's also a comment saying that this is a plus for the women and men that build these projects. And another suggestion that special events on county property be exempt from the ordinance. An event takes place on a single day, and 99% of those on site doing the work are a separate business that should be responsible for managing their own employees and wages for a single day piece of business. We should not be burdening the management of someone else's business. So thank you, we will bring that forward. There is another question asking, would reserve firefighters who are being paid a stipend be required to be paid the state minimum wage?
I think that'll have to be determined once the ordinance is.
Yeah, I'm not certain that we have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will take that comment, and I think when the ordinance is considered by the board, there would be clarity based on their decision there. And another comment, if I'm a nonprofit, what is my incentive for using county property for any of our services if this ordinance passes? Wouldn't I be better served by pushing all of my service offerings to city/private property and using the cost savings to serve more people? So thank you for that comment. We will take that forward to our board for consideration as they consider this ordinance as drafted.
Okay. Before we move on, there was just one more question that I saw in here that I thought might be helpful for us to respond to. One is, what was the question between a minimum and a living wage? So I think perhaps a lot of folks may understand the concept of a minimum wage that currently applies in our country, and depends, again, on the jurisdiction that we're living in. But a living wage is specifically set within each jurisdiction, such as the city of San Diego has set a living wage. The county currently does not have a living wage. So if a county property is where you have a real estate contract with us, the living wage ordinance currently would not apply on that property within the unincorporated areas because this jurisdiction does not currently have a living wage. So hopefully that clarifies some of the different categories of wages. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Ann Baldwin, who will provide a DPW airport-specific example. Ann.
Thank you. The ordinance as written would also apply to both aviation and non-aviation businesses on county airport-owned property. The proposed ordinance is intended to only be applied to new leases or leases that are amended at the discretion of the board. However, the language in each existing lease or license agreement will need to be reviewed to determine its applicability on a case-by-case basis once the final ordinance language is known, if it is passed. Leases being amended at the discretion of the board would become subject to the ordinance if it is approved, unless a waiver is granted. An example of this would be a lessee who is seeking to amend the lender provision or term of their lease to secure financing. As the ordinance is written, if a specific lease is subject to the ordinance, the requirements would extend to all contractors working on-site and/or subtenants employees working from the county property, even if that business has locations not subject to the ordinance. Our next few poll questions will focus on your input about the impact of the draft ordinance. Please respond to the poll link that will appear in the chat feature. We're asking you to let us know if the proposed ordinance would impact your likelihood of leasing county property in the future. Please feel free to use the chat box at this time also to provide specific impacts or additional comments on your poll response. So we're seeing the vast majority of answers coming in that it would impact the likelihood of leasing county space in the future. Right now, that's 90% of the poll respondents. Give it just another second here to, looks like we're leveling out at about 93%. So thank you for your input. We will share that with our Board of Supervisors. All right, so do we have any more chat questions coming in on this topic?
We do. There's more commentary about the impact for those that hold special events and request that special events, concerts, and nonprofits be excluded from this. A statement that, you know, in addition to having our business completely destroyed in the last 2 years, our industry relies on the use of gig workers, contract security, stagehands, et cetera, that voluntarily chose to work hourly jobs and not have full-time work. Thus, they do not and will not ever have paid time off, et cetera. Thank you for that feedback. We will be sure to include it. It is helpful to have the specificity in your feedback, so thank you. There's a comment that an impact will be that there will be no place for people to bring their horses and ride if the county prices us out of our lease. I thought leases could not increase more than 3% each year. So we will bring that impact back to the board so they are aware. Another comment that my opinion is that the vacant land the county has now will continue to be vacant, and it will significantly hurt the county if this ordinance passes. So we appreciate that response, and we'll bring it forward. Another comment related to special events about bringing private money to the county, which the county retains with large rent payments as profit. If this happens, and there are literally no large concerts that will be able to continue doing events at places like the Waterfront Park, where the capacity is unable to increase, and thus we have no way to increase revenue. Thank you for that addition regarding special events. That is helpful, and we will include it. And then a follow-on asking, so if I am parking cars for an event, would I need to pay the rate too? So as written, individuals working under contractors,
there's still the set rate of $25,000 for contract work. So those employees, while parking cars at an event, are not working from or on county property. Their base would be elsewhere, and they would not most likely be subject to this ordinance.
Thank you, Anne. Another comment I'd like to share is that it comes from Taylor Guitars. We at Taylor Guitars are deeply concerned as this would cause us to have to reconsider our ability to manufacture in El Cajon on county-owned property. We have been manufacturing in East County for all 47 years of our existence, and we see this as the most significant threat we have had to our business. We do have a maquiladora in Tecate for some of our production. We would have to move more of our production to Tecate to be profitable. So thank you very much for that comment and the specificity. We will make sure we bring this forward to our board. A question about the county attorney determining if it is constitutional to add these covenants to existing owners.
And again, as currently written, the ordinance is intended to be prospective, which means if you have an existing lease with the county, it's not intended, as currently written, to apply immediately. It would require either a new lease or a discretionary lease amendment, which is an amendment that's reached between with the agreement of both parties. So as part of that amendment, a lessee would be accepting that obligation.
Thank you, Anne. There's also a comment sharing that the Gillespie Pilots Association volunteers walked the Gillespie Business Park properties and were shocked at how few people knew about or understood the impacts of prevailing wage on their company. Further, most of them said they could not afford prevailing wages. How can you push an agenda like this when the impact is going to be so devastating to companies on county property, particularly companies that will have to move off county property and lost jobs? Thank you for that feedback. We will bring this forward to the board in our report so that they can consider this along with the other impact statements. A question again related to living wage. What is the living wage for airport type jobs?
So living wage, unlike prevailing wage, living wage is generally not based on a classification of employee. So as we said previously, if you have employees working on airport who do not fall under a classification that currently has a prevailing wage rate by the state, prevailing wage is out of the equation. It would then be the higher of the remaining living minimum or other similar wages set, and that depends on the jurisdiction you're in. So for example, if you were on a county-owned leased property in San Diego City, within San Diego City, they do have a living wage, which could be higher than the minimum wage. If you were located in El Cajon, you may not have that living wage. So it's going to be the higher of whichever of the wages exist that pertain to you. But we're not suggesting that that airport jobs would have a prevailing wage classification. They may, and that would have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis.
Right. So a couple more questions. One, again, that relates to events. Am I understanding correctly that event organizers would also be required to ensure that the vendors providing equipment or services to their event comply with this policy as well?
I'm not really comfortable getting into the specifics of which vendors and contractors would fall under it for special events. That's a question that would have to be addressed more specifically than I think we can do here tonight. But we will bring those questions to the board and let them know that there are concerns about special events and the various type of employees who work at those events. So thank you for your input.
Thank you, Anne. You know, there's a couple of questions asking about ranch workers, and it does get into a bit of a specific scenario, asking about ranch workers that live on the property on my ranch and work on the leased property across the street. So asking if the ranch workers would have the wage requirements apply. A second comment asking, supporting the idea of exempting ranch workers from this ordinance. So we will definitely take this comment back as part of the impact statement and make sure the board is aware of the ranch workers and impacts there. Another comment that this will make small businesses, non-construction businesses on county land much less competitive, as we will have much higher costs. So thank you for sharing that. We will bring that forward. It helps to highlight that for our board as they consider the draft ordinance.
And I would just like to add to that, I understand with some uncertainty as to what that wage would be. It's difficult for leaseholders to quantify the impact to their business that could result from this proposed ordinance. However, it is valuable to the Board of Supervisors in making this decision if you can let them know what you believe those impacts would be. And perhaps you can't specifically quantify the change in, your costs or how much of a competitive disadvantage you believe you might be in. But if you can, that would be valuable information for both us and the board. So we welcome all input on those topics. Thank you.
Thank you. And another related comment is that agriculture should be exempt from this ordinance as well. So we will make sure we bring that suggestion forward for the board's consideration.
All right. Well, we've got one more poll question here. Our next poll question is specific to the costs of doing business with the county under the proposed ordinance. We want to know if there would be any impact to your business costs to implement the Working Families Ordinance as written when you lease space from the county. Please use the poll link in the chat to respond. And also, are there other organizational impacts related to costs that you anticipate that you could tell us about? If so, please comment in the chat feature so we can capture that for our board. All right, well, it looks like 90% of you are thinking the cost could certainly increase. We thank you for your input. Looking at the comments, we've got another one. Who will make the decision as to which highest wage is going to apply to this ordinance? We're told it will be the highest of all categories of wage, and living wage is trending across the state of California to be something essentially the same total wage cost load to employers similar to prevailing wage. So again, prevailing wage is for certain classifications of employees. Right now, you could look, if you were located in the city of San Diego, you could look to their living wage ordinance and see what the impacts would be there. But for the county, we don't currently have a living wage ordinance. And so if you are in an unincorporated area of the county or in the incorporated city that doesn't currently have a living wage, then living wage also would not apply. So it's going to depend on the location where you work and the ordinances and wage statutes that are in place in that jurisdiction. So be looking at all of them that overlap in that jurisdiction and going with the highest one.
So I see a comment saying we need to support this ordinance more so if you lease. As a community, we can't only take, we need to be current. So thank you for that. We will include that in our feedback to the board, and we appreciate your statement. I have a question that gets specific, but Anne, I'd like to read it because I think it represents a real life question.
Okay.
If an organization leases land in both incorporated, where there is a living wage, and unincorporated, where there is not, areas, but the same members of staff work on both properties, how would we establish which wage to use? If the prevailing wage doesn't apply to the job type and living wage is higher than minimum, how would we decide which wage to go with? Or would their hourly rate have to vary depending on which site they're working on? And the person said, sorry, I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. And that gets a little tricky. It really does. It would be, it's possible that there could be a split of time, and so there would be a split of the wage. Those sort of specifics would really need to depend on the specific ordinance language and implementation of that language in given circumstances. So I'm not sure we could say.
And I appreciate that, and just want to mention that we will bring this forward. I think it kind of highlights the complexity
Right.
of some of the questions about the ordinance as drafted. So it's very helpful to have that question, and we will bring it forward.
It is. It's helpful to possibly guide the language in the ordinance to be a little, have more clarity.
Yeah. So I want to share another comment saying that based on the recent Amazon build, which was canceled, it seems to me that requiring this increase in cost is restricting the economic development of these areas rather than helping it. So thank you for that comment. We will bring this forward. It does align with some of the other comments we have heard about the impacts and what it means if implemented. Another comment saying, would most likely move headquarters off county leased land and potentially move all employees out of state to our office out of state. So again, appreciate that real life example of the impact of implementation of this ordinance as drafted. We will, again, bring that forward. So another question, if you would be punished with the new ordinance by getting a new lease, and a new lease is needed to improve your existing lease, why would anyone ever be motivated to improve their existing lease?
And thank you for that question. I think it does raise a good point, and it's a comment that we've seen more than just in this forum tonight, and we will bring that forward to the board for their consideration.
And another comment saying that staff has never defined a living wage in a dollar figure, and that leaves the definition for future interpretation. So,
living wage would be something that, at least in the unincorporated areas, would be established at a future time, if at all. The same with the various incorporated cities. They all have the ability to establish a living wage, but without that having been done, we don't know what future wages may be established. So we cannot give a dollar figure or a calculation where one does not yet exist.
Thank you. I want to share another comment saying prevailing wage is a responsible wage, a wage that allows the employee to be self-sustainable, non-dependent of a government assistance program. This is about making our community stronger. Thank you. So thank you for that input. We will also bring that forward. Another comment advising this needs to be less broad. It should just be, it should be to just contractors and prevailing wage within that industry. Why would you want to include all these other businesses that are not one-time project oriented? Look at state AB 5. It was a disaster and was far too reaching. Far too reaching. Let that be a reference to what a far too broad reaching measure can do to our citizens, businesses, and overall health of our economy. So thank you for that comment and for the specific reference. That is helpful, and we will include this as we bring the impact forward. Another comment related to lease amendments and renewals. By delaying the ordinance effects until renewal, you create a situation where the current Board of Supervisors can claim a victory or improvement in citizen lives without being responsible for any of the consequences. 5 years from now, when no one can afford to work or operate a business on county property and revenues are down and properties are vacant or dilapidated, it will be a new board's responsibility. Thank you for that comment. We will definitely take that forward in terms of your input on the cause and effect relationships with the ordinances drafted.
We have some things I'm finding in the chat here as well. There was a question regarding if a living wage did not apply on the property, would the minimum requirement for sick leave still apply? And the answer is the ordinance as written currently, yes. The sick leave would still apply regardless of which of the higher wage was determined for your property. I thought another interesting comment that just came in was, will the impact report illustrate the impacts on the minority and refugee communities? Both have articulated their inability to maintain their current employment numbers if the ordinance passes. The ordinance could forcefully unemploy hundreds of employees with the minority and refugee communities. So thank you very much for your comments. And we are going to be noting that and we include equity statements in all of our board letters, and we will be capturing some of these comments in that document.
And we also have some questions. Do the panelists or hosts believe a family of any size can live on the minimum wage? Obviously, don't speak to specifics, but we are including those comments as well to the board. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Moment, please. All right. So thank you, Anne.
Yep.
So we've been looking at the chat and responding to questions from you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to remind us of the time frame and move into the next stage of our discussion.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We really do appreciate all the comments that the participants have been sending us. So I want to thank you for all of your time this evening. So what I'd like to tell you is we are going to open this up for verbal comments. We have about 30 minutes left in the meeting, and we want to make sure that you're able to be on record and be heard, and that we can capture your feedback to take forward to the board. Just a reminder that October 5th is when we will be taking the board letter forward on the agenda, and it will be posted on the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors website on Wednesday, September 29th. We will also share, we have an internet page on the Working Families Ordinance that has all of our meetings, the roundtables, all the discussion recorded and in the chat and Q&A. So I just want to make sure that that's going to be available for everyone. And if we can get that link posted up in the chat for everyone, we'll make sure that you have that before you leave tonight. And if you choose to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting, it's going to be taking place at the board chambers on the 3rd floor of the County Administration Center, located at 1600 Pacific Highway, San Diego, California. So I'm not going to close completely now, because what I'd like to share is that at this point, we'd like to open the verbal chat, and you can either raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and call on as many people as we can, or you can *9 to raise your hand if you're calling in by phone. So I'll just say that one more time. So raise your hand, and we will raise your hand, or if you're by phone, push *9, and we'll be sure to capture. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Okay, we're going to have 1 or 2 minutes to speak. We'll be keeping time just so each person has an opportunity to be heard. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Embry? You can unmute. Thank you, Joan.
Oh, sorry.
If you could unmute, Joan. We heard you for a second.
Okay.
There you are. Yes.
All right. I've had a lease for over 40 years for an equestrian community access riding club. And I utilize my ranch hands who live here on the ranch. They provide housing, vehicles, television, electric, water. That's part of their salary. I don't know how they fit into this program. The biggest problem I have is that this is pretty much a nonprofit organization, and I have no way of anticipating the cost the way this is being discussed to me and how I project that, because I may not be able to meet lease payments if the costs go up anymore. So already I have cost of living increases and requirements for insurance and requirements for all kinds of things that are impactful. My employees trim trees, do the grounds, work the equipment like tractors, which is my equipment. So if they're not using my equipment and I can't use my employees at the riding club, I don't see how I can continue to function and meet all of the costs and the lease as well. So it pretty much, I think, could put me right out of business, and that includes my 200 club members and all the community access groups. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. We know what you've given to the community, and we'll be sure that we're capturing that. We have it on record for this meeting as well. Graham, thank you for being here tonight. I know you said you would, so we're interested in hearing your comments.
Hi, how you guys doing tonight?
All right, very interested in hearing what you have to say, and I heard you want to buy some land. I saw that in the chat.
Yeah, we're ready to do it. So for those that don't know me, my name is Graham Mitchell. I'm the city manager for the city of El Cajon, and I want to thank staff for putting this together. Appreciate it. So just so you understand, and I think it's important that the Board of Supervisors understand that the county actually owns about half of the city's land that is zoned manufacturing and industrial in the city of El Cajon. So theoretically, 3 board members that don't even represent El Cajon are going to make a draconian decision that will have a massive impact on our community, which is defined by the federal government as a disadvantaged community. And I hope that staff will at least share that as part of your recommendation, that how 3 individuals can have such a big impact on our community is actually insane. We're bringing forward a resolution of opposition to our city council next Tuesday. If anyone's interested in a copy of that, shoot me an email at gmitchell@elcajon.gov, or if you want to sign up a letter of opposition. But we're opposing this for 3 main reasons. 1, we believe that this is inherently unfair. 2, we think this actually has a bigger impact on communities of color. It's disproportionate on communities of color. Hence, the policy is racist. 3rd, we think this has an environmental impact. As businesses flee East County, it puts more cars on the freeway, increasing greenhouse gas emissions. It's bad for the environment. Join us in opposing this. All those are on this call, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Graham. And I do recall that you said you had 338 leases with us, so we can appreciate your perspective. I see. I'm sorry, I don't see a last name, Doug.
Hicks. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. One of the things that I'm concerned with is when we talk about prevailing wages, we're talking about opportunity in our communities. Right now in the construction industry, 50% of the workforce is on some form of a safety net program. That is absolutely going to happen in our communities and continue to happen if we don't do something to increase the standards. Utilizing county property should provide a community benefit. Those who develop and operate business on it create generational levels of wealth. If they're going to create and profit from that, they should also be supporting the communities from whom they're going to profit from. So I think that this Working Families Ordinance is a huge step forward. It's an opportunity to send a message that we will no longer be a disadvantaged community. We will have standards for those who are going to utilize our public resources. Those standards are going to be upheld, and they will help break the generational poverty that we're seeing in some of our East County communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug. I see Michael Borden.
You know, that's very interesting comment you made there, Doug. And I have to reply to that. I think you've missed the point. What's going to happen if this passes is there's going to be massive layoffs. There's going to be jobs lost. There's going to be businesses closing. It's going to be devastating for East County. And I think a lot of people that thought this is a good idea are going to realize that they just didn't have any clue about what was happening in El Cajon and in East County. I've heard of crazy things passing and crazy proposals, but honestly, this one tops all of them. I just hope the County Board of Supervisors can do the right thing and eliminate this as a concern for all of us business owners.
Thank you very much for coming out again, Michael. The Chestnut, we're going to get it right this time saying your name.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity again to speak about this proposed ordinance. I would like to restate a question that I asked in the chat. It's related to who actually decides what is the highest wage that will be applicable to our projects. And that is something that I believe will have to be decided by the Board of Supervisors. Is that correct, that there will have to be a decision made? Because we can't have businesses and ground lessees trying to research what highest wage is going to be applicable. So my point is rhetoric. There has to be a follow-up decision made by the board to impose what they now believe is the highest wage applicable. Otherwise, it's an absolute nightmare and it can't be enforced. So my belief is that the very next thing, or very shortly after the ordinance is adopted, is that the County Board of Supervisors will adopt some kind of living wage. We have done research and are prepared to deliver this research to the county. And part of that research is showing the living wage fully loaded cost to employers is approaching $60 an hour. Living wages also speaks to the type of employee, and what if that employee is a single parent and has a couple kids, they have to be paid a whole lot more. You can imagine the nightmare that is to manage effectively a business. My point in the conversation is that this is a huge threat that is all about incredibly increasing costs to employers and putting developers like myself and tenants that lease property all through the county at a disadvantage, and they're going to have to shut their doors.
Thank you, Lee. We are going to be interested in that research that you deliver to us so that we can make sure that we represent the entire perspective. Let's see, I see. Hi, Barbara. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you for having this tonight and allowing us to be here to talk about our concerns with this ordinance. This is Barbara White, the CFO from Taylor Guitars. We've been very vocal, both with letters to all of the supervisors and in attending every event, every forum that's being held so that we can get our concerns about this ordinance out. Close to 50% of our over 500 employees in El Cajon are persons of color. And we are concerned that this is actually going to hurt the very people it purports to help. In terms of which wage would be applied, we have some positions where we do have people that have a classification at the state level for that role. And yet if we were to pay them that, we're forced basically by internal compression to increase the entire company. And that's just not something that we can do. Our markets are primarily outside of San Diego County. We sell to 72 countries around the world. We export internationally, and we have to compete in a global marketplace. So if our hands are tied on what our costs are, one of our most significant costs, it's going to be very difficult for us to be continuing to manufacture on county land. I do have a process-specific question. Will the ordinance be modified based upon all of this feedback before it's provided to the board on October 5th? Or is what they're voting on exactly what we see here today in the draft ordinance? And if it is going to be modified, when would we have access to those modifications to see the changes?
So first, I just want to thank you for representing and advocating for your company. On the other side of this is we are compiling all of the data to provide and inform the ordinance. Whether changes will be made before the October 5th meeting, I cannot speak to that yet. This is the last meeting that we're having, but we will let you know if we post something that's different than already posted. Did you want to add anything, Ann?
I just wanted to add that the board action will be posted approximately a week ahead of the October 5th board date. And at that time, the draft ordinance should be an attachment posted to the website, and that is what the board will be hearing at that time. So it will be available ahead of the board date by at least a week.
Thank you.
Welcome. Again, looking for, it looks like Victor Diaz.
Yes, good afternoon. I am forward. I'm not opposing it. I believe that if we go against this, the low wage jobs will be pretty much, I'm for it because I believe by going forward, the low wage jobs would be decreasing and good paying jobs would be increasing, which would be bringing to our communities skilled and trained workforce, which increase our community wealth. As we speak, I just opened escrow in El Cajon, which I get paid prevailing wage, and I can barely afford to get a 2-bedroom house, which is pretty much, I'm all for this, and I want everybody else to be able to have the opportunity to buy something and also provide for their families in this day and age with everything so expensive. Pretty much we have to support this, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Congratulations on your new home, Victor, and thank you for your feedback. Let's see. I see Christopher Allen.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Allen. I'm calling in support of this city ordinance. For a long time now, the city of El Cajon has had the lowest median household income amongst cities in East County. The one way we can change this is by having this ordinance go through to where we invest back in the people. And this is how you create community wealth. You don't create community wealth by pointing the finger and saying a living wage is not in my business plan. The only way you can create community wealth is if you enrich the communities by allowing prevailing wage on projects like these or properties like these in order to get East County back to where it should be. The hardworking people in America deserve the best, not the worst. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. We appreciate your feedback. James Sly.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. My name is James Sly and I'm with the East County Economic Development Council. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the presentation tonight and I can appreciate the intention behind this ordinance, but I'd like to use this opportunity to share a little bit of the data that we've pulled together. So over the last couple of weeks, we have interviewed more than 200 small businesses on county property. The bulk of them around Gillespie Field, but also others scattered throughout the rest of East County. And what we've found is that of those 200 plus interviewees, more than 170 small businesses have indicated that they would either have to go out of business or dramatically reduce their workforce. And given that East County is already a historically disadvantaged demographic, we're very concerned about how this can impact the job seekers, the refugee community, the minority communities located within East County. And I think that as people are considering this ordinance, they're imagining these large companies, and I believe someone mentioned earlier about generational wealth, but I can tell you that as we're going around to interview these small businesses, I don't know that the small deli is establishing a lot of generational wealth by being on county property. I don't know that the 6 to 10 person tool and die shop is making billions of dollars there, right? Most of these affected businesses are micro enterprises who will be ruled unsustainable if this ordinance passes. So we are very concerned to see the dramatic cost that this can bring, and we believe that East County will be disproportionately affected. And given that we are already one of the most disadvantaged regions in San Diego County, we really believe that this ordinance will be more harmful than helpful. So thank you.
Thank you very much, James.
To ask to ensure that James and the ECEDC can provide that information to the Board of Supervisors. I think it would be very useful. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Anne. I'm looking to see if there's anyone else who would like to speak and be on record. Caller,
last four digits, 4109.
Hi there.
Hello, hi, this is Hannah Bay. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego County Farm Bureau. I'm calling today to express opposition to this proposal from all of the agricultural leaseholders on the County of San Diego land. Ag operations at a minimum should be exempt. It's very important to understand the realities of proposing an ordinance and passing it like this. In the world of agriculture, San Diego provides the highest and best labor conditions arguably in the world, not only in terms of monetary compensation, but in terms of safety regulations. We've been regulated to that space. And when we put our local agricultural businesses out of operation because they cannot afford a significant increase in labor costs, the demand for food and agricultural products does not become reduced. What does happen is we get an increase in imported agricultural products from slave labor sources, from unregulated, environmental, unfriendly sources. If you want to see poor labor conditions in the agricultural world, I would encourage you to look 30 minutes south of the border where those farm workers are paid $3 a day. And our farm workers in San Diego County are paid obviously the minimum of minimum wage, but oftentimes they're given wide benefits, health, 401ks. This particular proposal is going to put a significant amount of businesses out of business. They will either completely vacate or move somewhere else, or they'll possibly move out of state. I think it's really important, if the county wants to encourage a prevailing wage, they provide incentives rather than mandates. And that is what's lacking here. This is a regulatory hard line rather than an incentivized program. And the indirect impacts are very significant. And I'd like to again reiterate what the Farm Bureau commented at the last meeting, which is the burden of providing an economic analysis really does fall on the County of San Diego staff. And not only is it applying the prevailing wages that you think would apply in this condition and the increase each leasee would have, but also providing an economic analysis for what will happen when all of these leases are vacated and your tenants have to terminate them because they can no longer be economically viable. So again, thank you for the opportunity to comment. The County of San Diego already has issues leasing agricultural lands. Something like this is only going to make it worse. And we're very concerned about being able to continue to provide some of the highest paying jobs in the agricultural industry in the entire world here in San Diego, simply by providing a blanket, formula that is not analyzing the real life impacts of what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. We appreciate you giving the real world examples. We also appreciated the opportunity for our team to be able to be present at your meeting last week. And so we'll be sure to capture your feedback for the ordinance. B. Francisco Pena.
Yes, good evening. I'm in support of this city ordinance. Let's invest in our own people, in our own towns. People say that businesses will be going broke eventually and eventually close. With this new city ordinance and having a livable wage tied to them, established, I could assure you that more people of the working class will spend more money within our communities. Let's face it, us working people, the more money we get as we become skilled and trained, the more we invest and the more we spend in our local, smaller business areas. So sometimes you don't see the big business people, investing in the smaller communities or in the smaller businesses. It's us, the working class, that's actually going out there and investing with the smaller businesses. So I do push that we do move forward with this new ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. So I know that we have about 8 more people, and we have about 7 minutes, but I want to make sure that you're heard. So we're going to take the 8 and go from there. So let's take a look here. Is it Robert? Thank you, Robert.
Robert, can you please unmute?
Let's see, Robert.
Button.
There you are.
There we are. My wife and I have been running a business on Gillespie Field for 23 years. We've grown it from 3 employees to 45 employees. That is 95% minority and women. If this changes, my lease is up in 7 years. I cannot renew my lease. I don't know what my expenses will be. If they keep changing, I must shut this down. These are single moms. These are people who own houses. We are paying more than minimum wage, but I cannot run a business when it's unpredictable finances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Mike? Sorry, we might have several mics. So Mike Cosiela.
Great. Thank you. You got my name right. I'll be very brief. I'm just here to represent the special events community. We operate for one.
Oh, Mike, we lost you.
Sorry, you got me?
Now, if you could start over, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm here to represent the special events community. Most of these businesses that own special events operate as sole proprietorships and operate for 1 to 2 days a year, period. Generally don't have any employees whatsoever, at most 1 or 2. And our entire year is based on one or, on a win or lose on one single day. We hire corporations such as stage, sound, lighting companies that have their own wage policies. And then everyone else, as mentioned earlier, would be a gig worker who sets their own wages. So it just doesn't make sense to lump special events into this ordinance, considering the time of operation we have and considering that everything, basically 100% of everything we do is outsourced. And again, we don't have employees that we're paying salaries for the entire year. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. We've captured your feedback. Appreciate you being here. Let's see, I think we've got Sherry Painter.
Yes.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for that unmute button popping up. I was trying to figure out where that was. I couldn't see it prior. Yeah, I thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this forum as well as comment. I am actually calling in opposed to this idea. We are a veteran-owned small business company. We're a fairly new industry. Our company name is Bird's Eye Aerial Drones, and we provide drone services to most of Southern California and across the United States. As a small business that's new, there isn't a classification role for the majority of our employees. However, we pay them very generously. I heard somebody say, we need to invest in our people and our employees, and that's something that has been a priority to us from day one. I think for us, the 2 ways that this would be very difficult is that oftentimes we're part of projects that require prevailing wage, and because there is no prevailing wage for the majority of our employees, we're forced to pick one, which is a much higher rate than we already pay them because of how it plays out. This in turn would make it very difficult for us to participate in bids and be competitive to other companies in our industry that are not on this type of land. Secondly, I'd like to mirror what the guest from Taylor Guitar says, is that there are a few roles in our company that do have a prevailing wage. And if we change their pay, then we've got to change everyone so that it's fair. And that would, that along with the cost it takes to monitor and manage prevailing wages would have a detrimental effect to our business. Thank you.
Thank you for representing your business, Sherry. Let's see, I think we have George Viramonte.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me. Hey, my name is Jorge Viramontes. I hear a lot of this talking about persons of color. Those are my people. I'm a Hispanic American. Let me ask this simple question to all you owners out there asking about these. You can make money off my back, but you can't pay me what I'm worth because I'm skilled and trained. I kind of find that one-sided. Answer me that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Stephen Evans.
Good evening. Thank you so much for including us in this conversation. I think it's really important, and I know that I'm a special event organizer, and I wanted to speak about that. I realize we're a small group, but I think it's important to consider. I own a small business in San Diego. We're just under 10 years old. I support between 4 and 5 major events a year at Waterfront Park. We work very, very closely with Waterfront Park. And we are not only the event management company for our customers, but we also provide many of the services that Mike spoke about, my friend Mike spoke about earlier. And we generate well over $1 million in revenue. Jorge, my friend, I have 90 employees, many of whom are Hispanic. And I heard somebody else, forgive me, I can't remember your name. We pay them very well. They have benefits and vacation, and they have plenty of paid sick time. But as Mike mentioned, in our industry, our work focuses on just a few days. So, any of you that have seen the festivals that we work on at Waterfront Park, it takes hundreds of workers just a few days to build our show. And then in one day, we take that out. And the gig economy, it's something that I can't control. In some cases, we are able to make sure that people are being paid at the highest. And we're hiring great companies, and we're hiring local companies, which is a part of the mission of myself and the customers that I work for. It's really important that we consider not doing this for events, and we humbly request that the events industry be excluded. I don't mean it as a scare tactic. I don't know how any of my customers can stay at Waterfront Park if this happens. So again, thank you very much for including us and for putting this together.
Thank you, Stephen. We definitely have the special events perspective, which we appreciate. I think we're going to bring in Javier Santizo.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We can, Javier.
Okay, my name is Javier Santizo. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the time. I've heard plenty of comments here, like competing globally in modern day slavery. I'm just gonna let you guys into a little information here. You look at projects like El Cajon Mazda, the project they got. You have an out-of-state general contractor that's contracting a contractor that's local here to San Diego, irresponsible contractor, pays cash. It's not illegal to pay cash, but it is illegal not to provide your worker an itemized wage statement. So for each dollar that goes from one hand to the next one, those are tax revenues that aren't going into our communities. Now, when that worker gets injured, who forks the bill for that? Us, the responsible contractors and workers of the community. Our tax dollars go and pay for that person's hospital visit, right? And just to point something out, I mean, when people say you pay your employees well, I find it hard to believe that you're going to pay somebody a wage that they could go and purchase a house on a gig job like you guys said that's going to last 1 or 2 days. Let's be real here. We got to be responsible with the men and women that build our communities, our infrastructure, our schools, our courthouses. We need to do what's right for our communities. We need to be current, and we need to support this ordinance. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much, Javier. Let's see, we have 2 more individuals. So Lee.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk once more. I want to make a comment to the community that's speaking, that are working very hard on projects and speaking for and really trying to drive home what their needs are. I would like to share that I have spent my life committed to hard work and support for hard workers. And the level of commitment that I've made to the people that work with me does reflect honest care and concern for people that are working and working hard. I also would like to share with you that the studies that we've done and we will be sharing with the county have shown that about 2% of the companies that we've interviewed actually only pay minimum wage. The majority of these companies actually pay far greater than what is a set minimum wage, and many of them actually include substantial benefits, which I've heard on the conversations tonight from other employers, substantial benefits that help and support their employees. I've personally lost a major prospect that was going to be bringing 400 plus new jobs to El Cajon. And I know the level of commitment that they have to their employees as to wages they intend to pay and packages for benefits and things that are supportive of their employees. What we're finding in the research is that there are very good citizens in the area that are employers and are far above any set minimum standards. And this ordinance, if it was imposed, would pull the rug out from underneath the abilities to continue to work with their employees in the strategies that they've set, which does include much higher than minimum wage and includes a lot of benefits that support their lifestyle. And we are all on the same page of seeing everybody have a positive lifestyle.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the healthy conversation across the different perspectives. And that we've been respectful to all participants in the meeting. So I think we have Doug, and then we'll have our last speaker, and then we will wrap up the meeting to be respectful of everyone's time. So Doug.
Good evening. Yeah. I hear a lot of employers talking about the fact that everybody in this call is paying a living wage, great benefits. Then why is it that East County is still significantly economically underserved to their employees? Why is the AMI lower? How are those things bore out in the numbers that it's now an economic opportunity zone? If every employer was paying this living wage that I've heard about, we wouldn't need an ordinance like this. But instead, we're staring down the face of poverty numbers, poverty wages. Every employer says we can't afford to pay more wages. San Diego is an expensive county to live in, yet we all can afford to live here somehow. I think that we need to change the paradigm of what we're talking about, how we look at it. And if we look at AMI, especially in East County, we need to take a good look at the fact that we're not creating good jobs, wages, and benefits. We're seeing an exodus of people. How many people are going to go visit their families in Phoenix? How many people will go see their grandkids in Phoenix because people cannot afford to buy a home in East County? I was born and raised in East County. And I'm watching the property values, and I'm watching my friends and my families move to other areas because they can no longer afford to buy a home here because the wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. So I would challenge all the employers to say that they're out there paying a great wage and benefit package to look at the cost of living in our city, look at what they're paying their workforce, and then tell me why this ordinance is coming forward. It's not prosecutory. It's actually an opportunity to create community wealth so that those who are creating the wealth with their hands have an opportunity to stay in the cities where they're creating that wealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So I said last one, but it's going to be last two, and then I am going to have to make the last call. So I'm going to go to Barbara Wright, and then I'm going to end with Renee Moore.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak again. I appreciate it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things we've heard and a couple more points that I had not made. I agree with Anna from the Farm Bureau. I think it would be great for the county to work with the businesses involved here to look at incentives and ways that we can continue to increase the standard of living for our employees. It's something that's very important to us at Taylor. In fact, I've heard a lot tonight about intergenerational wealth. And the truth is that even on a living wage salary, with the cost of living in San Diego, our employees are not going to create intergenerational wealth from their wages or salaries, even at a living wage. The best way to get intergenerational wealth is through capital. And that's part of the main reason that our founders originally from Taylor Guitars decided to convert our company this past year to 100% employee owned around the world. So all 1,300 of our employees around the world are actually owners of Taylor Guitars. So those same employees are going to be hurt by anything that creates such
uncertainty for our business. And I think that's a big part of this, is the uncertainty that it creates for our business. There's so many different ways that the wage can be adjusted in section 73.10, including point II, which says, you know, whatever the county decides it should be is what it's going to be. Businesses cannot exist in times of uncertainty. We have to understand what it's going to be. So I really encourage the county supervisors and the staff to create and draft the ordinance. If it has to be drafted, draft it in such a way that it creates incentives for companies instead of a hammer, and that also there's far greater certainty to companies and certainty of things that they can afford. And in our case, that our employee owners can continue to do business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker is going to be Renee Moore. Let's see, do we?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. So I wanted to make a comment to Doug's last response regarding fair wages to City of El Cajon, and specifically East County. I have 125 approximate employees. We lease county-owned property at Gillespie Field. And we don't have but maybe 5% of our employees who are residents of East County, first off. I have a lot of employees that don't even reside in the county of San Diego. And this wage ordinance is going to require that when they work in the county of Orange, the county of Riverside, the county of LA, because they work from our property, we have to pay them a rate. I'm all for paying skilled and trained workforce when it's necessary and when they are skilled and trained, but you're telling me a first-year laborer has to be paid a higher rate than they are valued at from day one. It's going to cause unfair competition, discrimination against my taxpayer and my employees who are taxpayers, who are no longer going to have projects because we will not be able to be competitive on private work off county-owned property if I have to pay them the same wages as I do on my jobs of public works projects. So I am opposed to this. There's a lot of uncertainty that hasn't been set forth regarding the rules of public works that are going to be applied in this ordinance. But worst case scenario, it is detrimental. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being on the record, Renee. So what I'd like to do is just kind of recap, if I could. So just as a reminder, there was a lot of activity in the chat that probably would keep us here for quite a bit more time. So what we're going to do is take all of the chat from the meeting, and it will be posted. And I also wanted to let you know that we've had an ongoing Q&A from all of these roundtables where we have been answering your questions, those that we can. So we will be sure that, did we post the link for individuals to our internet site for the Working Families Ordinance? Did we do that?
Yes.
We did? Okay, so please, we'll do it one more time so it's the last thing you kind of see and have a chance to link on there and watch as things get posted. We really appreciate the time, the real examples, the research that you're going to be sending, the letters, and the healthy conversation for everyone that's been participating on the call. So I think at our highest point, we had 101 participants. And so that's a lot of engagement. And so we definitely want to thank you. I'll just ask the team if there's anything else needing to be said. All right. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a very good evening.